Even as a teacher, what I can tell you is I go through every process with you. There's always something, but what I tell you right from the get-go is that you're okay. Please remember you're okay. You're not here to pick out your flaws and pick yourself apart and to find problems in who you are. You're here to recognize that things in our lives have been conditioned to us, or we've had habits and behaviors that are not aligning to who we're becoming today. But also the big part is the identity. How do we identify ourselves? And the reason why I have a house built is the whole More Than Existing is about building the empire. And it's the empire that's inside of us. And it starts with a foundation. You have to kind of build. The thing with building a good, healthy, whole life that is sustainable is that you start with the blueprint. You blueprint out a life. So you build it before you build it. You start from the ground up. Awakening, spiritual awakening does not mean that you're living in awe, and it does not mean that you have figured out all the shit or that you've hit the level of perfection, because perfection is only fear. You never wanted that perfection. It's acceptance. And so when we can roll out the paper, so we can roll out a piece of paper, we can look at ourselves and we can say, okay, let's start. How do I want to see my life? What was my big dream? What was my big dream as a child? How did I want to start? And trust me, I've built several foundations, several businesses in my life that were successful, but I crumbled. And not that the business crumbled, I crumbled because I wasn't strong enough within my own self and my own identity of knowing who I was to be able to sustain that. I always knew my dream, but I didn't know how I was ever going to make that dream happen. And how could I make that dream happen if I didn't even know who I was, or I had old beliefs and conditionings. So in your foundation of your life is where we're starting today. And this is introduction. We go deep into this stuff when you start the More Than Existing program. When we're looking at building our empire and we're talking about a blueprint, this is how we would blueprint out a life. We would take out a piece of paper and we're going to start getting very clear. So in level one, we start with looking at the beliefs and behaviors and the actions and starting to make changes. So your beliefs define you. And your beliefs define you, but are they healthy beliefs, and do they align to the true essence of you, or do they hold you back? Habits, people say, oh, well, if you got, it's about having good, healthy habits. Not all habits that you have listed as good habits are actually healthy for you. So the fact that sometimes I always say, what we do in coaching is that we literally get you to change the time that you even so much as get up and brush your teeth, or start noticing if you put the shoe on the same foot every time, because some of the habits that we have mushroom us, is what we call it. So it takes us to living down in the foundation, and we have those habits because they became comfort to us. It's like having comfort food. So down the foundation is where we have our addictions and stuff all sit down here as well, right? So this is where we belong. This is where we've been living pretty much our whole lives, is down here. But if we have a cracks in the foundation, which means old conditioning beliefs, this is where fears live, judgment live, all of these things leave us with a weak foundation. You cannot sustain building an empire or building a life for yourself with a weak foundation. We're always going to have human moments. Remember that. This is where temporary satisfaction comes in. So we could start to build this, and I'm going to build this big business. I'm going to build this big life within myself. And building an empire just sometimes mean that you're able to get up, get your shoes on, get out through the door, and that might be the empire that you have for a whole year. Perfect. If we can get you from not being able to do that to achieving that, then you've just built yourself an empire. It's the home. Your home is the shell that houses your soul. And this is the empire we start with building. The home is the house. The house is the home that holds your soul. This is where your spirit lives. It is inside of you. So you can put on all the faces you want for the world. You can pretend all you want. You can put on all the makeup. You can do your hair however you like. You can dress up. Trust me, I spent years putting on a mask. You can put on the prettiest of clothes. But if everything on the inside is broken or is continues trying to be what somebody else wants them to be, the foundation cannot sustain it. The weaknesses, the fears, the judgments, the self-judgment, the self-sabotage, all of those things will creep their way out through. And you will find yourself right back down in that bottom level again, not being able to rise up and stay up. We want you to be able to sustain it. We want you to be able to live within yourself, healthy and whole, and know that challenges will happen, but it's not going to drop you all the way back down again. So in the foundation, we have the identity, habits, and behaviors conditionings. Temporary satisfaction comes with the roles that we play, which becomes our identity. So if you're identifying yourself as the perfectionist, what is really the perfectionist? When perfectionist is riding the front seat, as Brene Brown says, fear is riding ahead. You will if perfectionist, if you have to perfect everything, what are you afraid of? Are you afraid of being laughed at? Are you afraid you're not going to be good enough? What is the fear that's the underlying condition? Now, there's one thing in being a perfectionist and another in being somebody who wants to achieve, giving their best, because they ultimately know that what makes them live in a sustainable home is that they do their best and they put forth the best work that they can. And that's what I've learned about myself in this program of my own that I was doing, was that I used to always think I was a perfectionist, and there was a period of time I was, but it wasn't. And it wasn't that I wanted to please other people, is that in the essence of everything that I know I am, in my code of ethics, in my integrity, in everything, is that I give my all. Because if I'm going to give myself to something that people are either paying for, like a service, I put everything into it because those people are worthy of that. And I believe all people are worthy. So I give my all no matter what. That's not perfectionism. There's a difference. So this program also becomes about learning words and how important words are, and what one word means to one person, it might not mean the same to another. And we start to get really clear on that. What is a trigger for you? What triggers you? Sometimes it's a word that might trigger you. One of my girls, she was always called needy, and so I called her needy, and she was getting mad at me, and she wasn't. And I said, no, you don't understand. When I'm telling you you're needy, it's not your mother telling you you're needy and that she's trying to brush you away. Is me trying to tell you that you have some very important needs that need to be met. And so those trigger words were things that were that were crumbling and cracking her foundation, because she discovered words that were where the inner child, where that little hurt little child was still trying to be a grown-up and trying to run a whole household. Well, a grown adult has to be running a household, not a child. What happens when that inner child of us, that fearful, traumatic little child of us, or the teenager of us tries to do the adult job? It can't sustain it. It will not be able to be withheld or held up. And so in these roles of our identity, we have the martyr. You have that do-good person who's always there when everyone else has drama, because they're going to fix everything, because they want that validation that they're enough. They want that attention, and really paying attention to what roles you play in family, what roles you play in your relationships, what roles you're playing all the way around within your life, of where and how you are showing up, and is it serving you? What is it costing you to be that role? What is it costing you to behave that way? What is it costing you to keep having to maintain that identity that everyone now expects of you? And then you have the victim. So if you came from a family of victims, chances are you're going to be playing the victim. Is everyone does me wrong. Everyone does us wrong. Everyone's out to get us. Well, then you become that. Well, how do you show up? What identity are you creating if that's what you're doing? But then you want to go out and you want to live in a world where you can be a part of the world, but how can you if you're the victim? Right? And so if you really pay attention to, if you're really paying attention to these roles and you start to notice them, and you'll notice them because we start to recognize them. We do what's called characterology, and characterology is a really in-depth way of looking at our personality, our archetypes, our identity, how we've been working with who we are, and the value that we place upon somebody else validating our worth, our value, and the essence of how we're showing up in the world. And then we also have in here the roles of people saying, oh, you're a drama queen, or you know, or you have, you need to pay attention. You have these addictions to things, or you, or how else can I put this? Or you're always the person causing trouble, or you're always, and so that's how you become identified. And does that really serve you? Is that working for you? Do that make you feel good about yourself, that somebody else is identifying you as that? And are you really that? So if you were the princess, if you were your whole life being told you're the princess, what happens with the princess? Sometimes the princess then starts to expect a mate, a partner in life, to treat you like you're a princess. And if you're not getting treated like that, then there's something wrong with everybody else. Why aren't they treating me like I'm a princess? That's what I deserve. I was told I deserve that. So then everyone else becomes a problem. But is it true to you that you really feel like you're a princess, or are you constantly then trying to validate your worth? Paying attention to these details is going to be a very important part of this whole journey. Then we have over here, which is seeping out through, which starts to seep. It's like having, when it starts to rain, and you're all happy, and you're thinking, oh, well, I built a foundation, but I want mine to go up really quick. So, because I want to get moving in life. So I don't want to do all this work, and I don't want to come to class, and I don't want to do the worksheets, and I don't want to do none of that stuff, because I don't need to do that. I just know what I'm doing. Well, then you put up a really quick, fast foundation that is not going to be strong enough. So then it starts to crumble, and then the pieces start to fall. Whereas if you take your time, what kind of weight am I going to be carrying? What kind of life am I going to be living? What have I already been living? Or what can I let go of so that my house can actually be lighter? And we build up walls, we put up walls, we put on floors, we do whatever that we have to do to build the life that we really want to live. But we also guard them. So if you don't have a vapor barrier on the outsides of your foundation will eventually leak. So this is where we really come into looking at judgments. Who judges you more than you? Nobody. There is no one that judges us any harder than we judge ourselves. And why do we judge ourselves? Because we live in a world where our flaws have become pointed out more than ever. But we also live in a world and in a life where it was okay for a lot of years for us to be able to make fun of each other, or to have it was okay for brothers and sisters to make fun of each other. And it was okay for people to emotionally abuse us. And if you think back to childhood and you think of siblings, or you think back of your parents and how sometimes they were allowed to emotionally abuse us because they only did what they knew. But we know a lot better now. So we're raising our children to be different. And we're raising them with the essence a lot of times that we pay attention to how we speak to them. We don't allow people to treat them that way. We don't allow them to be bullied. But we had all those things, and they conditioned us then to fall into these traps. And that ultimately would leave us to the self-sabotaging moments, or to allow in the wrong kind of people to seep into our basements and into our lives that become like an infestation, like you just got infested with mites, cockroaches. And when there's cracks, then cockroaches and that kind of stuff can get into our foundation. And if you ever look at how a house is built, they're not going to build a foundation inside the ground and make it of wood. They're going to build it with a strong brick that can still be porous, can still absorb, but it can't seep all the way through. And then they put a barrier on it. You'll find your protection. You'll find what works. and you'll find what you can use to sustain the life that you want to work with. Every single person that is in these programs are unique. Your identity is unique. And when you start to get clear on your identity, you start to accept and embrace your little quirks and the little things about you that become the pieces of you that you want to hold on to and keep. So I spent years not even wanting to talk about God because I figured it was a bad thing to want to talk about God because people make fun of you. But God is an essence for me, and I live in the essence of God consciousness. So I would try to avoid having to even have that conversation, but I slept with the Bible underneath my pillow when I was a little girl. And one of the reasons why I slept with a Bible underneath my pillow was because I had a love for the holy world up there, but I also had a fear, and the fear was instilled into me because my mother put me in a Pentecostal school, and a pastor came into our school, did a sermon, and says to all of us, no one else probably even heard it. I heard it. I was like the one non-Pentecostal person sitting in that school, and and he said, your mother, if your mother or father is a Catholic, you're going to hell. Well, my mother was a Catholic and I had to be going to hell. So I went home and I said my prayers and I put the Bible underneath the pillow and I slept with the Bible underneath the pillow because I was praying for her. So when she came in to tuck me in one night, she said, what's under your pillow? And I'm like, the Bible. I've been praying for you, Mom, because I don't want you to go to hell because the pastor says you are Catholic. See how we get imprinted? See what happens to us? See how we carry that? And of course, my mother's response, if you know my mother, was, fucking idiot. Who the fuck does he think he is? Blah, blah, blah. That was her, right? But she carried it because she had been tortured by the nuns. She had been picked on her whole life. So she was still being picked on, even though she wasn't even there. And then it was being passed on to me and I was being picked on. I got it home and I told her my story. And then me giving her my story then imprinted onto her. So every story that you're told is then going to imprint onto you. So every story you tell your child or tell people, it's going to be somewhat of an imprint to them. It's whether or not they carry it. Well, I carried that. I've turned it into rocket fuel. Now that I have a whole new understanding, now that I can talk to Jesus and Mother Mary and I can communicate and channel them, and I use them in my work, and I don't expect everyone else to believe in them. God is a light inside of me. And every one of us has the essence of a God-like light inside of us. We're all golden. And that's why my slogan is, I'm fucking golden. And I'm golden, whichever one. If you don't want fucking on your t-shirt, then I don't have piano. You'll have two to buy at my events, but they're there. And the essence, you get a choice in my world. You always get to choose, but what's it going to cost you, right? Are you going to wear the boring nerd t-shirt? Or are you going to wear the fun t-shirt that's going to make someone stop and ask you, why are you wearing a shirt like that? It's the whole essence of all of that. But as I've learned and as I've been downloaded, and what I think back to him was he was only preaching what he knew. He was only speaking what he knew. The advantage I have is that I was a child who get to grow up then in a world that has now expanded, now opened. Minds and hearts have been opened. The world has awakened on a different level. Everything is to be written and interpreted the way that we get it. And so that's the way that when you look at your own life, just because this is the way you were or the way your parents were, it doesn't mean that you have to stay that way. You can recondition yourself. It's like putting a good conditioner in your hair. So like I said to the girls, you can either buy the cheap pert shampoo and conditioner at the store, or you can go buy the good stuff, right? So in that, you can recondition your life to make your life what you need it to be so that it is healthy and whole, but it's going to take you making changes. You cannot stay in the comfy knowing and expect there to be a change in your life. You have to shake things up. So the whole foundation has to be rebuilt, restructured, kind of from the ground up, or really redone so that there's absolutely no leaks can get in there. And when you know that and you have it built strong, then you can start to live. So this is what I was talking about this morning with one of my colleagues. We were doing some coaching conversation stuff, and we were talking about how big 1% is. So if you're living your life 50% here and 50% here, and you're talking about making a change, and here's the line, and this is you're good and balanced, right? I'm balanced because my habits and beliefs are like, I'm 50% here and 50% here, but nothing is changing. Nothing is changing when you just stay 50-50. No one has to make a decision. Nothing has to happen. We're comfortable 50-50. Do you know how powerful taking 1% from here and putting over to here is in breaking and changing habits and beliefs? That 1% is the most powerful thing that you can do in your life. All it takes is making a 1% change, and everything will change. Because once it's tipped, once the scale is tipped, 49 to 51, there's way more in the 51 basket than there is in the 49. When you look at an empire, a massive empire, somebody wants to have the 51% shares. When you take a business, an empire, and you build it on a 50-50, when it comes to butting heads or a change need to be made, nothing can happen on a 50-50 unless both people are totally on board. So unless the two sides of you, your masculine, your feminine, are all on board, nothing is going to change. If somebody has the 51%, they can shake up a house, they can shake up an empire, and a change can happen. The 49 will eventually become weaker. So then you're wanting to take even more from the 49 and bring over here. So then okay, so I'm starting to feel better over here. So then you start to take the percents and you start to put them into the basket, and then you split that, and then you start to make a change again. It is the ripple effect of the change. Once all 100% is over here, then you split it again. Then you take 1%. And then there's a desire again. Every change happens when we have a desire in our hearts that often comes from an anger or a decision that I am done. Mine started from a decision that said, I am done. My exact words were, I'm effing done. I'm effing done. I'm going to find happiness and joy no matter what it takes. What I have learned is that in all of my life, at 40, almost 49 years old, I'm only now learning the essence of what true happiness really is. Because first I had to get to the definition that really aligned to me of what happiness looked like. And even though I'm living up here and I'm even working in the upper floor of my house, is the essence that I kept going down to the basement and trying to pull up stuff. I'm trying to pull a red chair from the basement all the way up to my office, thinking that I need it because it was in my old office that was in the basement of the house with my ex. Because I had a massive office down there and I have a small office up here, but that was in the basement and I own nothing there. This is in the top floor and this is my office and this is my space. But a piece of me still wanted to drag some shit out of the basement to bring up to here. So my 1% change that I was making was that I kicked the chair back down the basement and I walked up over the stairs. And when I walked up over the stairs, there's a mirror. The 1% different that I made that day was I looked in the mirror. And that day was the day that I seen me. And that's where level 2 started to really come in, and recognizing that level 2 would be the mirror reflection. So you're here, you have already made that 1% change. That's the win that you're really looking at right now. You have made a choice in your life to achieve, to do something for you. Your 1% was the introduction to more than existing. You've already started that ball rolling and move and tipping the scale and making some sort of change by showing up, by being present, by saying I am worth it, by saying I want to look at myself, I want to explore this, I need to do something different because what I've been doing all along is not working. And we keep going back to the dream. What does your dream look like? What does your home look like? What does that home that you live in, how do you see it? What do you want to bring forth? And so when we become resistant to even that 1%, because now that we have 1% over, you can't be comfortable and just saying, oh, I made a decision to do this, but I'm not going to put the work in. What's holding you back? What keeps you from being able to be the best version of yourself? Is it fear? 99% chance it is fear. And why is fear the deciding factor? And when we talk about conditioning, we talk about our ancestral line. We talk about the cycles, the family cycles, the friend cycles, the patterns that we continue to do. What is your pattern? What have you been patterned to do? Do you give up doing the things that you want to do to make somebody else happy? Do you stop doing what you love to do? Or do you start out with a big plan? I'm going to do this. I'm going to achieve this. And you get all the way up here. I'm doing great. I'm doing great. And you crumble right back down again, down to the bottom, because you can't find that happy medium, because you've become an all or nothing. And we have so many of these moments that would happen like in the more than existing level 1 when we were all in, is that this whole, I'm doing great. And they're like, oh, I'm not doing great. And I'm like, find a balance, ride the wave. And so when you break a cycle and you make the change, you heal the generations who've walked before you. You don't have to go back to every parent or everyone who's hurt you and point fingers at them and say, I learned that you caused me all this pain and you did this and you triggered me and you made me this way. And if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be this person. Because is that serving a need, and what is that helping? It becomes, and how do you respond with that? You know, it's that ripple effect of the cause and reaction. You become a part of the problem because you're sitting in the problem by pointing fingers. We're looking at sitting in the solution. And that's why we come from the point that you're okay where you are. You're not a problem. You don't have a problem. You're beautiful. You're wonderful. You might not believe it yet, but it's there. So as long as you just say, I'm okay. Things are going to get better. We're going to improve. We're working on a plan. I'm going to be okay. Because a big part of building anything and blueprinting anything is making a list of the materials you're going to need. What materials do you need to build a healthy home empire within you? What are your materials? So what do you need? Support is one of the biggest ones. And these are things that are okay to write out. It's okay to write out your request of needs that you're going to need help with. And we talk about this once you go into the level 1, is I ask, what are your expectations? What are your expectations? Because remember, expectations can set us up for failure and disappointment. But if we don't know if we don't have the clarity, then we can start to define and get clear on what it is you're searching for within any program, because people don't know what you want or need if you don't use your voice and ask. We always have these wants. What are your wants and what are your needs? And this is a big thing, because if you're in, and this is where those roles we play come in. If you're someone always, I want you to do this and I want you to do that, and this is what I need, sometimes those wants are a big problem for anybody to ever be able to please anything that you're searching for in life. but you get what you need. And when you trust the divine and you trust the divine messages that come through, or what you're actually getting, what shows up. So I teach intuitively because I channel through the energy of the class. What do they need today? What is going to be of service to them today? With an outline. I come in with the materials. I come in with a plan. I come in with a well-structured foundation into what I'm doing, because these are the things that I've learned. I'm not building another empire that's going to crash. I'm building an empire that's going to be strong, sustainable, and it needs support. It needs people to be able to put my message out there. It needs people who align to me, to my code of ethics, to who I am, and who can speak the messages and be kind, compassionate. And so all relationships in my life are all based on that now. No matter what relationship is in your life, it's going to have to be relationships that align to the life that you're building. And if not, those relationships will fall away from your life. So I take a breather moment and you step back. So you're going to have relationships in your life that are going to have to still sometimes stay in our lives, but you can have healthy boundaries around them. I'm not saying everyone run out and get divorced, everyone dump your parents, everyone get rid of everyone in your life. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that when you build up a strong foundation and you know who you are, you know what defines you, you know what's a healthy life, and you know the healthy habits that you've created, you're not going to let somebody else's unhealthy habits come in and infest your life. Then you got to bring in the pest control to get it all out again. So then it's like starting over again. So why would you spray something toxic on top of the beautiful flowers or a beautiful home that you're building after you've worked so hard to build it? Instead of jumping down into the problem, you learn to stay up in your foundation. You learn to stay up on the floor that you're living in, because the floors that you create are the floors that you're going to live on, and you're not going to keep falling back down. You don't go to the party on the bottom floor because it looks like it's fun, but you get the worst hangover and you do shit that then makes you feel really bad about yourself. You're going to have your own party up here on this floor with people who are aligning with you, and then you can invite people up here to your party, and if they don't want to come, then too bad, they're missing out on the best party. Everybody wants to get to the party that's up in the penthouse, but not everybody gets invited to the party in the penthouse. So you want to get up here, and when you're up here, you'll have the best life, the best parties, and you get to decide who comes, how they show up, what energy is brought in, but you don't leap off and come back down here. It's not that it's not going to happen around you, but you don't become a part of it. You stay up here. You stay creating and building from this place. So value and worth are two of the biggest things. And so when you look at your dreams, on your blueprint is you're going to have your materials, what you're going to need. So your support, your wants and needs, time, whatever it may be, make a list of what you're going to need. Then your dream home, your dream life. What was your dream life? And what's the timeline? What timeline do you have? Is it realistic? Can we break down the dream into smaller pieces? So if you have this big, massive dream, great. What does it look like? Is it achievable? Is it sustainable? Can you maintain it? Do you have what it takes now? What else are you going to need? And then how can you break this down? And what timeline? So if we can give all the little steps timeline. So if we build the foundation, how long does it take to build this? What timeline am I looking at? So what can be achieved in, say, an hour, giving myself 1 hour every night to put some work into my More Than Existing program? What can be put into my journaling? Do I have the time? And am I going to let somebody else's schedule dictate my life? Am I going to continue to say, well, no, somebody else needed me? I've got people that have rescheduled their whole work life to make sure that they showed up, and they didn't think they could ever possibly do this. but they did it. They were here, they achieved it, and they made sure that that worked. And I always think back to when I said I'm done and I start taking my life back, I would have this cutoff time in the day when I would be done work, and that because I went back to school. I went back to coaching school, and that's when I took my life coaching. It took me 1 full year. And that's when I started the More Than Existing program. That's when I started to create this. And people would say, oh, but I can only come at this time. You know, if you just take me at that time, I'll pay you extra, I'll pay you. The old me would have been the pleaser. I would have felt guilty. And I'm like, oh God, yeah. And then I'm like, no, I have invested. What are you investing into your dream? What are you willing to invest? What are you, you know, remember, if you don't invest wisely, somebody else is going to be taken from your bank. They're going to be pulling out your investments and spending it on themselves. So when I would say, oh, that's okay, I can miss class and I can be there for you because, you know, you need your hair done. So I would stay and miss class. What would happen to me? I was depleted. I wasn't investing in me. There goes the weak foundation. There goes the crumbling, because I was always known as the pleaser, because I was always trying to please my mother because I wanted to be enough, or I was always trying to be enough somewhere, and I didn't want to disappoint. I hated disappointing people. Oh God, if I disappointed people, then they're, you know, they're going to stop coming to me. Fear, 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 right? So I made sure after missing 1 or 2 classes that I was paying a lot of money to attend this school, was that I was not missing another class. It is okay to say no. Your healthiest thing, the healthiest thing you're going to do is learn the power behind your no's, the power behind setting boundaries, the power behind being strong to your conviction of, I am worthy. I am valuable enough to invest into me. So what is your investment? So are you worth this $1 million life you're building, or this $100,000 life you're building? Not that we're giving the life dollar value, but I'm just saying, for example, are you worth the full investment that you're giving? Right? And so this is why, even with the plan, I make it affordable to everybody by readjusting payment plans to suit if somebody steps up and says to me, I know I need this. Because along the way, people helped me. So I help in any way that I can to make this work for people, because it aligns with me and it brings me into the balance of giving and receiving, and still taking care of me, my investments, my home, my empire, my everything that I'm building, but also aligns me to everything that I am. I have worked hard to hold on to the strength that is within me. So I don't hold back on what needs to be said. I let my voice be heard, because the more that you stifle back, this goes down here into the conditioning. If you weren't allowed to have a voice as a child or as a teenager or wherever, if you were always told to shush, my favorite that I've always heard was that kids were not meant to be seen. And how many people lived in lives where kids weren't even allowed to sit at the same table as the adults. So you were taught that you were an unworthy human being from the time you're a little kid, because they were taught that you are unworthy. Kids, go away, go away, go away. Kids shouldn't be there. Kids shouldn't be at the table. Or that the only person that could sit at the head of the table was the man. The man of the house sat at the head of the table. And how many people have carried that over to in their lives? When you look at all that belief system, so it's been instilled in us from the old days and the old worlds, and we're breaking those. We're breaking those cycles. We're collapsing down those empires, and you're seeing those collapsing in the world as the world is unfolding, because the most loving thing we can do is to bring our dreams back to life and to say, I'm worthy of living this. I'm worthy of building an empire. And that was always my saying. I'm building an empire. I don't know what it's going to look like. All I know is that I'm building from the ground up, and I'm starting over, and I'm having a rebirth. So I'm starting by digging a new hole in the ground, and it's not to bury myself. It's so that I can build something strong from the ground up. And so this is where you now will be looking at cycles that you have continued, and that you're not going back on constant rewind, replay, redo. You can have a redo every single morning of your life. If you have a shitty day one day, the next day is a new day. You can start over. We're going to stop beating ourselves up, stop punishing ourselves, or stop continually think that we're going to have to do everything that makes somebody else happy. We're not going to live in fight or flight brains. We're going to move past all of that. And we're going to look at, what kind of role do I want to play in my own life? What is the character I want to be? What is the identity I want? What face, what mask do I want to wear? The real one. And you can have roles for different areas of your life. So we have different rooms in a house. We don't do everything in the same room in one house. You can have rooms, and you can decorate them however you want them to be. But the thing that doesn't change is the essence of who you are. You can chameleon to whatever you need to be for different things. But when you know who you are, nothing can rock the foundation and crumble it down. So some days I want to be this classy goddess energy, and I want to be sexy, and I want to be that. Other days I want to be lazy, slouchy Corrie with a ponytail on top of her head. It's okay. You're now being seen, and you're now worthy. And I'm building this empire as a tribute to you, because every version of us is worthy. And so when we recognize that every day we wake up with new cells, well, every day you wake up as a new person. So every day, it's like if you say, I forgive you for yesterday for thinking that you were ever meant to carry that load of yesterday. I forgive you for thinking that you were ever to carry that shit on your shoulders from yesterday. Today's a new day. Today I will start fresh. And it's actually called like a Ho'oponopono training, is that when we say we clear, we're constantly clearing out the energy. And once you get used to clearing out the energy, sweeping up the corners, then you don't keep slipping back down into the foundations, into the lower energy, the lower vibration. You learn to be able to stay up. That's part of the habits that we're breaking and changing, is continue letting ourselves be sucked in and dragged down. It's not somebody else creating the life for you and telling you how you should live your life. It's you creating your life. And when you look at it and go, this is my dream life, because it's my dream. It's what I'm doing for me, not what somebody else is telling me I should be. You get to use your free will, you get to use your own power, and you get to build your own life. And it's not shaken because somebody else throws off our day. And when we know that, that's when we know we're truly owning and appreciating every single piece of us. Value and worth. Who am I? Who am I? What role am I playing? And sometimes some of those character roles are, so most character roles that you have, and you'll learn this in level 1, most roles that you have are character roles that started between when our mothers were carrying us to 6 years old. That's when the majority of the identity of you, the character of you, has been mostly imprinted, was from being carried in the womb to 6 years old. And it's crazy to think that at these stages that we're at, that we still are imprinted by things that were roles that happened back then. But I've also learned that my job is not to fulfill an insecurity in any other person by taking away my own light and giving to somebody else. or making them more valuable than me. We are all equal. So that's why I teach on the level that I teach on, that I'm walking this with you. I am no more important than you. I walk with you. I walk among my people because we are all equal and all equally worth it. But how much work do you want to put in